Hi, we're Steve and Mary Prokopchek, and we're co-authors of the book Called Together, Ask the Difficult Questions That All Couples Must Answer Before and After They Say I Do.
We have been married for 40 plus years and have 3 adult children who are married. We have 3 grandsons. They are delightful. And I am an RN. I've worked at a family practice for over 25 years, and Steve has been on Dove's staff for over 30 years.
Right. So why did we write Called Together? We wanted to provide a foundation to marriages. We wanted to provide a foundation that our marriage didn't have. We wanted to reduce the incidence of divorce in our country or wherever this book finds itself. And we wanted to give a user-friendly tool to couples that are sitting down with couples and taking them through pre- and post-marital. So we thank you for being part of this training today. And those couples have a good marriage that we want to train. And they want to share that good marriage with the couples that are receiving premarital. So what are some statistics of marriage breakup today? Every 13 seconds a couple is breaking up. And we were told in 1981, from the 1981 statistics from the U.S. National Center for Health Statistics, we were told that 1 out of every 2 marriages were ending in divorce. So where did that statistic come from that actually was never true? That year there were 2.4 million marriages and 1.2 million divorces. But what was omitted from that stat was there was still 54 million marriages that just kept on flowing. So what is true? Barna did probably one of the largest marriage and divorce research project where he interviewed 3,142 randomly selected adults. And he discovered that 24% of that 3,142 persons had been divorced. Unfortunately, he also found out those who expressed that they were Christians had a similar statistic. So 1 in 4, that's better than 1 in 2, but our challenge would be how many airplanes would you get on if 1 in 4 planes crashed? So what is the history of this book and where does it come from? Well, originally we produced it in order to take the couples in our local church, which was a pretty large church and was growing. And we were also multiplying churches. And we needed a tool to take couples through premarital. And we also needed a tool in postmarital because all of the work that we had looked at that time didn't include anything on after the couple was married. So we've been through quite a few books. We originally had just loose leaf pieces of paper in a notebook, and then we finally just self-published in this version, and then we had a version with another publisher and another publisher. And so with these different books, we've been growing the material, we've been expanding the material, and we've been getting information from the couples that go through it, as well as the couples who take couples through it, how we can improve the material. So we created addendums over the years. These are the addendums you'll find in the back of the book. Those addendums cover remarriage after divorce. They cover intercultural marriage, interracial marriages. They cover when seniors remarry. So there's lots of extra help in this book. Called Together is not just about the couples that desire to marry. It's also about the counselor couples. That's those of you that are receiving this training. Because you are going to give your experience, you're going to give your lives to this couple as you take them through premarital. So what are some of the goals of premarital and postmarital counseling? Let us give you about 10 of them. We want to do some effective training of you so that we can complete pre- and postmarital counseling using the Called Together book and other related tools. So we do use some other tools that we'll talk about. We want to support the local church pastor by coming along that local church pastor and helping to build these premarital foundations for marriage. We want to effectively grow a relationship and build trust couple to couple so that we can enter into postmarital counseling, which will continue throughout the first year. We do not want to only cover the behavioral aspects of a marriage preparation counseling, but we also want to observe the process, and that's where a lot of your role comes in because you're facing that couple as you take them through premarital and postmarital. We want to prevent the recycling of family patterns and dysfunctional natures of families. We want to teach and model skills. That's also where you come in to be able to be marriage mentors. You're literally teaching them while you're taking them through your counseling. We're going to provide effective homework assignments. Those assignments keep them working and thinking outside of your counseling sessions. We want to provide meaningful spiritual input through prayer and appropriate use of the scriptures. And we want to help this couple to identify any family of origin issues that, number 10, that they bring into the marriage with them. So we might even meet with the parents of the couples in order to work in that area. So we did a number of years ago, we did a premarital counseling training questionnaire where we grabbed as many couples as we could find that had premarital counseling, that had some form of building their foundation for their marriage. And we asked them the areas of importance. We asked them how should we do premarital in their opinion. We asked them topics of postmarital and a lot of other areas. It was a pretty thorough questionnaire, but I want to just give you a few highlights from that. They said the 3 important areas of premarital would be communication, finances, and sexual relations. They said when operating premarital, they said don't rush it. Don't just push it through. Don't just get it done, but actually create a couple-to-couple format. And that's really where we got this idea of mentoring. And spend less time on conflict. That was an interesting thought. They said spend less time on conflict because a number of them said they thought they didn't have conflict prior to being married. So spend less time on that and go into that in postmarital. And they said spend more time on sexual purity. And in checking with them, they were communicating that often once they become engaged, people stop asking them about their walk in sexual purity. So they said to be sure that we were to ask that. Some topics of postmarital, they said surely finances, communication, sexual relations, conflict, goals, submission, and the spiritual relationship. So other areas that we received from input on this questionnaire was the counselors needed to be open and transparent. That is something that these couples appreciated if they were willing to be vulnerable and share about their relationship. They wanted a question and discussion format. So basically the Called Together book is a lot of questions that they have to work through. And they wanted to meet in a home rather than in the office or sterile office of a busy pastor. And when they did that, they found they only met with the pastor, rarely along with their spouse. So they wanted to meet in a private home. They wanted to have separate answer sheets, meaning they wanted to be working in their own book so that the other person did not see their answers and the other person's answers would be skewed if they did so. And they said that postmarital was a must, because it was the working out of all of the premarital in that first year of marriage. So a lot of couples tell us, but we just simply don't have time for premarital. It is something like an average of 200 hours of preparation for the wedding day. If you think about that, you're thinking about photos and videos, you're thinking about flowers, you're thinking about the outfits that they're going to wear, the dress and the food, the reception hall, where it's going to take place and who's going to attend. And there are just so many details that takes hour after hour after hour to put together. But we're asking through a few chapters of premarital, we're just simply asking for 12 to 20 hours with them. And the reality is those 200 hours of building a ceremony, they really do little to nothing for the foundation of their marriage. But the counseling does everything for that foundation. And so the comparison there of 12 to 20 hours to 200 hours, I had a friend tell me who had an intercultural marriage. So they got married in Europe and kind of another marriage in America. And so they had to have family. The main marriage was in Europe. They had a family come from America. They thought they probably put 400 hours just into their wedding ceremony, which again, how much of that work did anything for their marital readiness. So we are expecting full-on commitment from these couples throughout the 6+ sessions. And I think lastly, what we want to challenge you in is that premarital doesn't actually begin when you take the couple on into their first premarital session. Premarital counseling actually begins probably when they're pretty young, because they're learning from their families what marriage looks like. And that's an education in itself. And they're learning from their friends' families what their marriages look like, and perhaps their families have been through divorce and they know what doesn't work. So their premarital education starts long before we see them.
We have 6 reasons for pre- and post-marital counseling. The first is preventive maintenance. In the same way that we use preventive maintenance for our vehicles so that they don't break down and we don't have problems with them, in that same way, we give these couples tools to prevent breakdown and mishap in their marriage. We start with nothing and build. And teachability is at an all-time high with these couples. They really want to get married. And so we need to take advantage of their openness and their willingness to be involved in the process, and their willingness to be vulnerable as we do preventive maintenance and go through counseling with them. Number 2 is enrichment, and this is a time to build faith for an amazing marriage. We're not only giving them information, we are sharing our lives with these couples, and we ask them to be confidential with what we share about ourselves and tell them that we'll be confidential with what they share with us. But we're sharing our mistakes. We don't have perfect marriages. Nobody has a perfect marriage. And so we're sharing our mistakes. We're sharing our experiences to help them to enrich their relationship. Number 3 is provocation, and the definition is to incite into action through confronting challenge in order to bring about change. Most likely this couple is not experiencing reality, and that's okay. They're engaged, they're in love, they're looking forward to getting married. But you want to challenge the statements like, we'll never have to deal with that, or we'll never have a problem with that, or that'll never happen to us. Those are the unrealistic statements that we want to deal with and bring some reality to them. Goals is number 4. Are the goals for their marriage biblical and authentic? Or are they very worldly? You know, in the world, people just date and marry and they try it if they like it and see if it works, sometimes cohabit. And we're asking this couple, do they have biblical goals for their marriage for long-term commitment? Number 5 is reality. We hear all the time with boxing that it's the surprise punch that knocks the boxer out. It's not the hardest one necessarily, but the one that he's not expecting. And it can be the same with these couples that are preparing to get married. When they get married, it could be the loss of a job or inadequate finances or having to move across the country. We bring some reality in as we ask questions. How will they deal with these situations and not be knocked out, as we talk about the fighter being knocked out? And lastly is long-term vision. This is not a program where you read a book and watch a video and voila, you've got the perfect marriage. You're ready for a lifetime of wedded bliss. 6 sessions doesn't really seem like a lot. The book actually takes a backseat to the relationship that develops between the mentoring couple and the couple that's taking the premarital course. It's amazing to see what happens when that relationship builds and develops, and it's awesome to see how honest couples can be with one another. And we're instilling a long-range goal for a long-range vision of marriage. This couple needs to know that you're committed to them, and that you're just not going to write them off after the 6 sessions, but you're willing to stick in there for the postmarital and even beyond. Some benefits of couple mentoring. Number 1 is the female perspective. When Steve and I were married, or were planning to get married, we had 1 premarital session with my pastor, and his wife was not involved at all. And women really appreciate having another couple in the session. The women don't feel outnumbered, and they feel like they bring the female perspective to the sessions. Number 2 is a private counseling atmosphere. Couple-to-couple counseling is usually done in the comfort of persons' homes and not in the pastor's office. And people are more comfortable, more relaxed. Sometimes we even share a meal with the couple. And that is much more comfortable to them. We tried one time doing a session in a restaurant, and that did not work because we had our books out and the waitress discovered what we were doing, and then she started telling everybody around us that this couple was engaged and they're going to get married and they're doing their premarital session, and it was really distracting. So we said, okay, and that was the first and the last time that we tried a session in a restaurant. Number 3 is couple mentoring provides an example of a Christian marriage. Sometimes your marriage may be the only example this couple has of a Christian marriage. If they weren't raised in a Christian home, they've never seen Christian marriage, and they can study your marriage. Number 4 is the development of a relationship between the couples that carries through post-marital, and I shared a little bit about that before. We actually had one couple that we had such a great relationship with that every year we went to, post the wedding, we went to a NASCAR race together, and we called it their post-marital checkup. And we continued that relationship to this day, and they've been married for 15 years. So sometimes the relationships that develop are awesome and ongoing. Another couple that we did premarital with joined us at a local radio station to talk about Called Together, and they shared their perspective of the marriage counseling and what they received from it. And so we had a good relationship with them, and they went on to be missionaries in Thailand. And when they adopted their first son from Thailand, they asked us to be part of a time of prayer for him, just bringing him into this country and out of his faith there. And it was an amazing and wonderful opportunity for us. So when you develop relationship with these couples, it goes far beyond just the wedding. It goes into years beyond. Number 5 is that couple mentoring provides accountability for both couples. And I did touch on this before. We ask them to be confidential with what we share, and we tell them that we will be confidential with what they share. They may have parents in our church, and we don't share what happens in the session with their parents. We're very confidential. Number 6, couple mentoring enhances impartation. It's not just training and teaching. We are actually imparting something to this couple. And it's a wonderful, wonderful privilege and opportunity to be able to do that, that they would trust us that much. Couple mentoring is also a model of couple mission, co-mission, and ministering together as a couple. They get to see you as the mentoring couple doing something together, having mission together, co-mission together as you lead them through premarital, and that can be an example for them. Why do we insist on homework? Several reasons why we insist on homework. Homework causes the couple to think outside the session, just like in high school when we had homework outside of the classroom. This is for them to reinforce what we're teaching in the sessions or what we're learning in the sessions. Homework assesses marital readiness. How mature and ready are they to really get married? They're usually pretty serious because when they come for premarital, they often have the date already set. And so that tells you that they're pretty serious. If the date's set and they're working on their details. Homework provides accountability. Will they be open with their answers? Accountability to one another, not just to us. If they're not completing their homework, what does this speak to us? We counseled a couple one time, and the husband was not completing his homework. He'd come with his answers blank in the book, and Steve was preparing to confront him about that, and the Lord spoke to Steve and said, ask this man if he can read. Ask him if he can read. And as silly as that seemed to us, Steve was obedient, and he said to the guy, do you have difficulty reading and writing? And he was very honest. His head went down, and he said, yes, I can't read. I don't read, and so I haven't been answering questions in the book. And he kind of thought that was going to get him out of having to do his homework, but Steve said, oh no, he said, what we'll do is you need to find a friend, not your fiance, but a friend who can read the questions to you and who can write your answers down in the book. And that way you can do your homework and be prepared for the session. And we're really serious about this because if they show up without their homework done, we're not prepared either. So we ask them to turn that into us before the session so that we have time to go over it and be prepared for them. If it happens a second time, we cancel the session. That's how serious we are about it. They need to be serious about their homework, and we're serious too. We find the books hanging in grocery bags on our doorknobs, stuffed under our mats at the front door. they're snail mailed to us, their homework is emailed to us, and now we have a site that you can go to called together.org. Yes, and there's actually a PDF there that they can complete their homework online and send it to us. So that's a lot easier for this new generation of techie young people. But it is important that they get their homework to us. And we actually had one couple that we used Google Chat for our premarital sessions. He was in Nashville, Tennessee. She was in South Carolina, and we were in Pennsylvania, and we did a Google Chat for their sessions. And there were limitations in that, but it still worked. We could still all communicate, and we could still talk and discuss questions and answers, and it was a way to accommodate a long-distance relationship. Homework also helps the couple to get to know themselves and one another better through their answers and their honest and truthful reactions to situations that we put before them. Homework helps uncover the positive, not just the negative. We want to be positive about what we see as strengths in their relationship. And then, yes, you have to deal with areas that there may be a weakness and could be future conflict for them. And we want to help them. If there is conflict, we want to help them deal with it and resolve it. So sometimes in your sessions, there may be conflict that you will have to help them resolve. One couple that we mentored she was from a South American nation and he was from the United States. And when she would get upset about something, she would rise to her feet, storm around our living room and speak in Spanish, which we had no clue what she was saying. And then he would respond because he could understand Spanish. So it was kind of translation and interpretation, but we had to work through conflict because they were having conflict in our living room. So it can be very challenging sometimes for us. Homework can lead to discussion and prayer about situations that arise that you're not even aware of. We were in a session with a couple and we don't even remember what question provoked it, but the gentleman started to share about an addiction to pornography that he had dealt with in the past. That was totally new to us. We had no clue about that. And so we got to talk about his healing piece and his accountability piece, how he had walked through that and how he was continuing to walk through accountability and restoration. And all that conversation was triggered by one homework session. As the couple shares their answers, they're developing their communication skills. One thing that couples think they do well when they come is communicate. Oh yeah, we communicate so well, and they're texting and they're emailing and they're on the phone and they're spending hours and hours talking together. But sometimes they need to develop their listening skills. We may find one that communicates a little more or is overbearing in his communication. Homework helps to homework helps to develop honesty and openness as they tackle subjects that they may not have considered talking about before. Things come up that they haven't actually pursued. Doing homework gives insight into the motivation and ability to complete tasks as they work together. They have a common goal, and wrong motives can often be discovered if they're not willing to make the commitment to do their homework and be at the sessions and do the work that it takes. So I want to say again that there is a downloadable PDF file for homework using their computer versus writing in their books and handing their books back and forth, which can be much easier and simpler for them.
Yeah, so that website again is calledtogether.org. We'll mention it again in this video series, but at that site you'll find a page or two, and there you'll find some videos of us introducing Called Together. And also you'll find a PDF that you can download that the couple that are taking this premarital, the homework assignments are there. And that way they can electronically send it back and forth. For years we were just writing in our books, and this generation is just simply not doing that any longer. So that's available for them. So we'd like to switch gears here a little bit, and we'd like to talk about you. What are some of the marriage expectations that you had? Did you experience premarital counseling? Or was it kind of like us, either you didn't have it, or maybe you only had a couple of hours in a pastor's office? I can remember that distinctly. The pastor was a radio Bible teacher, and he had this big gray desk, and then there was this microphone that hung out in the middle of the desk, and he was behind the desk, and we were on the other side, and he was asking us a few questions, mostly about this ceremony. But I do remember he asked Mary a question. He said, "Mary, do you think that you could submit to Steve's authority?" And because we were young and in love, and her answer was, "Absolutely, I can do that," without any explanation of what that meant. So that was pretty much our premarital training, and we'd like you to consider what yours was, if you can remember what yours was, if you even had it at all. I remember we had a couple tell us that they had a session or two, but then they had to quit. And I said, "Well, why did you have to quit?" And they said, "Well, we just couldn't afford it any longer because we were taking it with a psychologist. It was too expensive." So it's not wrong to share your experiences, and as you go through this material, Mary, one of the things that she said, that it will hold you accountable. And as couples who are giving this counsel, this material will hold you accountable, because you just can't teach it and not live it. That's called hypocrisy. So we would ask that you would hold yourselves accountable with the material, and that we would be walking out as premarital and postmarital counselors exactly what we're asking the couples to walk out. So those of you, I want to speak briefly to those of you that are licensed or ordained. Now we're asking couples to do this that are not necessarily licensed ministers or ordained. We just want them have to be equipped and to share this ministry with couples who need this counseling. Take it away from the busy pastor, so to speak. But those of you that are licensed or ordained, we've been to a lot of weddings, and we've enjoyed so many of them. But the thing we don't enjoy is that when we find a pastor who's doing the wedding who thinks the wedding is about them and their message. And I just am here today to tell you that most people will never remember your message. And you're there really to honor the Lord, of course, in a marriage, but also to honor this couple and to hear their requests and of what they want for a wedding. I can remember a couple said to us they wanted their wedding to be 20 minutes or less. And so we said to them, "Well, do you want to have the lighting of a candle? Do you want to do communion? Do you want a gospel message?" And so they said yes to all of those things, which meant we were going to have to really shorten up our message for the wedding. And we actually did it in about 17 minutes. And I can remember some of the single young guys came up to me and said, "Hey, I hope you're around when I get married, because that was the most awesome wedding I've ever been to. It was short." So we're so grateful, and have the opportunity as a licensed minister to do this, but we need to be careful that we're representing the couple that's before us, and to do it well. We mentioned family of origin, and we mentioned some things that couples might carry into this relationship from their families. That's going to happen because we're not divorced from our families. And in reality, we can marry the girl next door, and we're going to marry someone from a different culture than us. I can remember when we were first married in our very first year, I came home apparently late for dinner, and it was probably around 5:30 or so, and Mary said that I missed dinner. And I said, "Well, how come?" And she goes, "Well, dinner was at 5. And I said, "Well, okay, but I had to work. I'm coming home now, so can we eat now?" And she goes, "Well, there's some leftovers for you." And I said, "Okay." So a few days later, I came home again, trying to be there at 5, and I couldn't. And she said, "You're late again." And she said, "Dinner was at 5. And I'm thinking about this, like, why does dinner have to be at 5? What if we're not hungry? And I said to her, "Well, so what time did your dad come home every day from work?" And she said to me, 4:45. And I said, "So what time did you have dinner?" She said, 5 o'clock. So without thinking about it, Mary was carrying her culture into our relationship. And so we talked about it and said, look, if we're not hungry, do we have to eat at 5? And if I'm late from work, or you're late from work, do we have to eat at 5? And so we needed to find our culture, not just his or hers, but our culture. So if you have the opportunity to sit down with a family of origin, if you're able to do that, here are a few things that you can talk to them about. You can ask the parents to share with the couple that's receiving premarital. Of course, it would be their son and daughter, or future son and daughter. What do they appreciate about them? What is it they find in their relationship that they appreciate, and really how can they affirm them as their parents? What are some positive qualities from the parents' marriage that the persons who are getting married can share about? Of course, this is for a young marriage. In what areas would parents like to see this couple move beyond them in their marriage? And in facing the future, what are the parents' expectations with visits and holidays? I think it's something to bring up from the very beginning, because we discovered that there are some parents who really want them there for every holiday, and yet because they're married, they need to share those holidays. How would the two couples like to pray for one another? And we give them opportunity to bless one another in prayer. Provide an opportunity for any needed forgiveness or apologies. Maybe this is a good time for the couple to talk about something that they've talked about in premarital, and to be able to address it with their parents. Ask the parents if they can affirm this marriage relationship. We would really like the blessing of the parents on this relationship. So some really important key details there with family of origin. I can remember we were doing a premarital with a couple, and she came into this relationship as a single mom. And her father, which was actually the grandpa, was really the father to the son. He really was the stand-in father. And the son actually called him dad. So now she's getting married to a man who is going to fulfill the father role. And the grandfather is literally going to have to step behind that and fall back a little bit and just be grandpa. And I can remember bringing them into the parental session, and he was overwhelmed by that, because he saw this young man as his son, someone who he poured his life into, and we just talked about the process of how was he going to do that. So a really, really important process. Please be honest with the couple that you're meeting with. Don't try to hide anything. I think young couples are very sensitive about that. They're very sensitive if you're not being vulnerable. They're very sensitive if you're not sharing some stories from your life. Again, we've talked about confidentiality, which is so, so important. The other thing is, if you're not licensed to marry this couple and you're not going to marry them, then I think it's important to receive permission from the couple that you would like to be able to talk to the licensed minister who is going to marry them. So if there is an issue that comes up that really needs to be dealt with, it's okay to deal with that. You can stop the premarital counseling, or you can put it on hold, or you can continue to do it while that person gets some further help. But it's important, I think, for the person who's going to marry them, their spiritual covering, to know a little bit about what's going on, not all of the details necessarily. So let me give you just a few other observations that we have in just preparing for premarital. As you meet with this couple, you're modeling, you're mentoring, you're spiritually parenting them. Don't just key in on the content. Make sure that you're spending moments to discuss the process and observing this couple in the process. Allow the couple time to talk to one another and process. One of the things that we do with homework is we often will have him share her answers and she will share his answers, just to switch it up a little bit. Sometimes they both share their own answers. Sometimes we take their books, we take their material and their answers, and we share them, because you can't go through all of the homework in each premarital session. Each premarital session is about 2 hours long, maybe 2.5 hours, and there's probably more material than that. So you have to find some good things that you need to talk about, and you have to find some things that really need improvement to talk about. So don't do the work for the couple. Make sure that they're doing the work. Make sure they're filling in the answers. What we find is that the girls write quite a few more words than the guys. Often the guy's answer will be yes or no or maybe, and the girls will often give a lot longer explanation. That's just kind of a part of it, and that's part of learning the process. Watch for patterns or cultural, generational patterns that surface, and there's some things that might need to be confronted. Pray with them and pray for this couple regularly. You might consider having a premarital session. That's sitting down with a couple, getting to know them a little bit before you go into the actual premarital. You want to be clear on the time frame. You want to be clear on the commitment. You want to be clear on the homework. You want to be clear that that's turned into you before the session. Big reason for that is you know that it's completed and you're able to go through their homework, and you as the counseling couple are able to prepare better for this couple and pray towards the session. Another thing I want you to be aware of, when you're preparing for these sessions, often a discussion comes up between the two of you as a counselor couples. And often you can get into an argument yourselves over a subject that comes up. So be alert to that. Be careful. There could be some backlash from doing this. Sometimes when we're talking about solutions and we're praying for this couple, sometimes things arise from our own marriage that we have to deal with. Seek the couple's permission to be intimate with them, because you want to be intimate in all areas of their lives. You want to be intimate about their families, their family of origin. You want to be intimate about their finances, about their debt, about any college debt that they're carrying, car debt, vehicle debt. You want to be intimate with them about their jobs, about their lives. You want to be intimate with them about their sexual lives, their previous sexual lives to this relationship, their present sexual lives in this present relationship. And after covering how serious premarital counseling is, you want to get their commitment that they're going to be committed to this process and that they're going to put in the effort and they're going to be truthful in the process. So let me give you some final words as we finish up this section on a process. Couples need to talk with their pastoral oversight before they get into premarital. What we found is in doing this in many churches, a couple finds the church secretary, they announce their engagement and they put it in the bulletin, and then the pastor is running behind them trying to catch up with their premarital, trying to figure out what to do for them. So we want couples to be trained in that local church. We want a list that the senior pastor has or the staff person has of these couples that are trained. And we want to find a couple for the couple that needs the premarital. We do not want the premarital couple to be calling names on that list and getting no, no, no. I'm already seeing someone, or I'm doing postmarital right now, or we're taking a break. We want the pastor to find that couple. And when the premarital couple calls them and asks to meet with them for, say, a premarital session over a cup of coffee, talking about the process, they're going to most likely get a yes from that couple. Yes, we're going to... Oh boy. Sorry.
I guess just keep going, just kind of pick that up there. Finally, remember where you were.
Yeah, they're going to get a yes from that.
Just start one more time because I was still talking there. And whenever you're ready.
So they're going to get a yes from that counseling couple that they want to meet with them in a premarital session. And they can go through those areas. But we don't want anybody, especially the lead pastor, to be caught off guard by this couple. We need to have time to take them through premarital. Counselors or the pastors can pick up the required material, the books. In many of our churches, we purchase the books for them. We don't expect the couples to purchase them. We require the premarital with them. We don't necessarily require the called together premarital, but we require premarital with them. And so if we're going to require it, we're going to provide the materials for them. Do not go beyond halfway through this. So halfway would be about session 3, which is communication. We'll get into that later. But you really don't want to take them through all of the premarital and then say, well, we don't think that you're called together right now, or you're ready, or you have some issues to work on. Probably don't want to go more than halfway in the counseling in order to share that information with them. And I want you to remember, Mary shared this, that teachableness is at an all-time high right now, because they're going through premarital in order to get married. And it's a good time to be able to say to them, you need a little bit more help in your life in this area. I'll just give you an example of that. We had a couple, we were about halfway through the premarital, and it just came forward that she had a severe sexual abuse in her background. And she spent a lot of time in tears over that, and we just knew that she needed more care in that area. Now, we're not professional sexual counselors, and we don't expect our couples who are trained to do this to be so either. So we need to hand off or get back to the senior pastor about that need. And in the couple that we had, we actually asked them to set aside premarital counseling for seasons so that they could get more help in this area. And they did that. They listened to us. They actually had to delay the date of their wedding over this. But she really needed some care in that area, and he really wanted her to get care in that area. We actually saw them recently, and they're married probably about 15 years now, and they have like 4 children. And they were all smiles and very thankful for the time that we had with them. and the time that we took to care about them personally and get personal care for them. So if you notice that, again, teachableness is at an all-time high at this point, and they want something. They want a wedding date. They want a marriage. And I'm not saying use that against them, but I am saying this is a time when that's something that they want, and they're going to be willing to get that extra care that they need. Finally, watch for cohabitation. Unfortunately, this is frequently occurring today, even among Christian couples. They're living together either to save money, or they are actually cohabitating and being intimate with one another. We were doing this training in a very large church in New York, and we had probably 20 couples there in front of us that were taking this training, so it was a pretty large church. And we got into this area of cohabitation, and the secretary raised her hand and she said, "So what do we do if I notice on their history form that they have the same address, which means they're most likely living together?" And that's something that we want to confront. Cohabitation does not help them have a solid marriage. And so we need to be strong enough to confront them and ask them if they're wanting to go through this premarital counseling, then we need them to separate, and we need to work on that issue with them and walk them through it. Premarital counseling is a lot of fun. It's personal. And it can be a really good time together. And as Mary shared, we build a relationship, couple to couple. Again, please seek this couple's permission to prod and to poke in areas that are going to be probably pretty difficult for them. You're going to know a lot about them, and that information is going to be really helpful if they do marry, if they are called together, to take into postmarital. So the material, we don't want to skip anything in it. We want to be clear to work on it. We want to be clear that we've had couples come and they just couldn't get the budgeting page filled out. So we just come alongside them, we get our calculators out, and we help them with it. It would be good for you to be familiar with the material. Make sure that you're familiar before you take a couple through this. Being premarital, postmarital counselors is a calling. As Mary shared, it can be a co-mission for your marriage. You'll be challenged to grow through this material. It will hold you accountable. It causes you to be ruthlessly honest about who you are. You'll need to be willing to be open and be challenged by this couple. Lastly, we need you to be comfortable with discussing any and every topic. Money, debt, bills, sex, past, present, and future, family of origin, faiths and beliefs, values, work, mission, all of these things. You'll have to be bold and forthright, but filled with love and grace. You have the opportunity to build a lifelong relationship with these couples and speak into their lives so that they have a lifelong commitment. We take seriously this whole aspect of premarital counseling and postmarital counseling, and we hope that you will too. So we thank you for joining us for this time, and we're looking forward to the next session too. Thank you so much.